In The Amazing History of the Vocaloids HD Part 2, we looked at the third and final English release for the first generation of the Vocaloid synthesizer, Miriam. To complete our look back at Vocaloid's initial foray, we're going to need to travel to the place that most people associate with Vocaloid today, Japan. As I said in my Leon and Lola video, Yamaha had a difficult time finding partner companies for their new technology in the early days, and that was as true for Japan as it was abroad. The technology was not an easy sell back in 2002. Yamaha's first Japanese Vocaloid partnership was with a small Japanese digital music company called Krypton Future Media, which would act as a publisher for Japan's first Vocaloid products. At the time, Yamaha had already made progress in the development of a male and female pair of Japanese Vocaloid voices, given the generic development names of Hanako and Taro. Prototypes of the duo were the first Vocaloid voices to be used in commercial music, as they were used in a song on an album called History of Logic System, which went on sale in the July of 2003. Though they probably began their development at the same time, the male vocalist would spend significantly more time in development, so the female was released first. While Leon and Lola were imported in March, Japan would receive its first native Vocaloid, named MEIKO, on November 5, 2004, and she was met by a fairly receptive audience. She would have to perform solo for more than a year, however, as her male partner, KAITO, was not released until February 17, 2006. No other voices were released between them, which is one reason I am covering both vocalists in this video. As I said in the previous episode, Miriam Stockley had reservations about recording for the Vocaloid synthesizer because she was worried that a digitized version of her voice could potentially make it difficult to find work as a singer. She was not the only person to have such worries. Yamaha could not convince any big-time professional singers to sign on to the project, in part because of similar concerns. There is also the matter that the technology was unheard of, and some people had difficulty understanding its implications. Is this something people would really use? So with no A-listers willing to bite, Yamaha sought out independent singers to source the voices for MEIKO and KAITO. Details on the whens and hows are sparse, but the company somehow found the two perfect people for the job. Since MEIKO was released first, let's introduce the woman who provided the voice upon which she was modeled. Haigo MEIKO is a Japanese singer-songwriter, and she is pretty rad. Her Japanese Wikipedia page says that her music career began in 2001, though it lists some songs and performances throughout the 90s as well. It also lists her first single as a song called Tomato Soup. There is footage from one of her live performances on YouTube, and Tomato Soup is one of the songs performed. If you have never heard Miss Haigo sing before, I highly recommend checking it out because it is a really nice song and a wonderful performance. For now, we are instead going to look at this small performance from 2013. At least, that's when the video was uploaded. Ms. Haigo was touring Hokkaido, and in the last day she visited the headquarters of Krypton Future Media in Sapporo to perform a song for the staff. This video is from the official Hatsune Miku YouTube channel, and thankfully it includes English subtitles for Ms. Haigo's comments before and after the performance. It's impossible for me to describe with words how cute and cool she is, so just watch.
歌の旅をしに来まして、それの最終日、今日は見えるのかな、周りに、社員の方がたくさん見守ってくれている中、北海道最後のライブを、させてもらっています。時間になればいいなと思って、いつも歌っています。それでは聴いてください。リビング。3、4。築30年の集合住宅の端っこに私んちはあって 3LDK の 70平米のどこにでもありそうな我が家、お父さんとお母さんとおじいちゃんとおばあちゃんとお姉ちゃんと猫とウサギと私、リビングはいつもにぎやかで平凡。ありがとうございます。良い経験をありがとうございました。またやらせてください。ありがとうございました。お疲れ様です。今日も一日頑張ろう。
See, what I tell you, MEIKO is just awesome. You're probably thinking that I've showed an example of Ms. Haigo singing so that you can compare it to the sound of the MEIKO Vocaloid, but that's not quite true. Honestly, the MEIKO Vocaloid doesn't sound very much at all like Ms. Haigo, which is understandable given the technology of the time. The Vocaloid synthesizer was not designed to completely replicate the human voice, and of course, these were the first commercial products to be developed for the Japanese language. I shared the clip of Miss Haigo because most people, when they're learning about Vocaloid for the first time, don't realize that there is a human element to it. In the first generation, Vocaloid voices were based on models of real singers' voices, and in the generations to follow, Vocaloid voices directly sample real singers' voices. We Vocaloid fans often like to joke of them as singing robots, but that is a term of endearment. We never forget that behind those voices are very talented and wonderful singers and performers who help make them what they are. MEIKO and KAITO's voices are very synthetic by their very nature, due to the construction and style of the first generation Vocaloid synthesizer, and they don't sound all that much like the singers who provided their modeling samples. But I think you'll still be very impressed with them. KAITO's voice was modeled from samples taken from singer and occasional voice actor Fuga Naoto, a Tokyo resident. Fuga Naoto is his stage name as he has never revealed his real name or age. He has no trouble sharing his love for his cats, however. Mr. Fuga has been singing and making music since 1990, if not earlier, and he even became a music lecturer at Musashi University. He has provided backing vocals, music, and leading vocals to many songs over the years, from commercial jingles meant for advertisements, to anime theme songs, to dubbing Disney movies imported to Japan. How precisely he was introduced to Vocaloid and how he was convinced to sign on to voice KAITO is a story I would love to hear. Now, let me introduce you all to Mr. Fuga. Unfortunately, this video does not have any subtitles, but I thought it would still be cool to show a little bit of this interview since it's about KAITO. Some of you may even recognize the lovely lady interviewing him.
CD でリリースすることが大決定いたしました。ということでこちらのお二方に来ていただいております。どうぞ。
皆さんこんばんは。ボーカロイドKAITOのモデルを務めました風雅直人です。
よろしくお願いいたします。早速なんですけれども、この曲もともとニコニコ動画で人気になった曲なんだそうですけれども、風雅さんはどんな形でこの曲に関わっているんですか？
そうですね、ニコニコ動画の曲はKAITOを使って作成された曲なんですけれども、今回の CD ではそのボーカロイドのモデルとなった私が、歌を歌ってるという形なんですけども、
風雅さんご本人が歌っている、
はい、
ということは何と言いますかね、究極のコラボレーションというか
まあそうですね、ちょっと恥ずかしかったですけどじ
ゃあ私はもともと初音ミクっていうのを担当している。
This performance was held during the Matsuri.Diva event in the March of 2014. This short live event primarily features Haigo Meiko and Fuga Naoto performing songs written for their Vocaloids, though some other singers join in for the final song. It's definitely worth the watch if you're a fan of the Krypton Vocaloids.
灰色の丘乾いた枯れ草踏みしめて思い巡らせる空の彼方に風に揺れる花びら柔らかなあなたの微笑み淡い記憶のかけらセピア色の向こうの幻誰も知らない歌を奏でよ好みが咲いて止まることも崩れかけた墓標に歌い続けようあなたの残した
One of Mr. Fuga's most endearing characteristics, if you're a Vocaloid fan, is that he absolutely loves KAITO. All Vocaloid voice providers appreciate gifts from fans, of course, but Mr. Fuga collects KAITO merchandise and artwork. From what I've heard, he'll go out and buy them himself, and his Twitter is full of pictures of his ever-expanding collection. And by all accounts, he is a very sweet and kind man. His stage name may mean something like elegant sound, but what he really should have picked was classy sound, because that's what Mr. Fuga is, classy all around. He even tweets happy birthday wishes to MEIKO on November 5th. What a guy. While Leon, Lola, and Miriam received a lot of critical praise, their sales were lukewarm. MEIKO was the first hit of the franchise, as she sold around 3,000 units in her first year. At the time, 1,000 units was the benchmark for success. It was surprising that MEIKO sold so well, and we can make some educated guesses as to why. For MEIKO's debut in Japan, she was basically released in a vacuum. There weren't any other products that could do what she could, so she was creating her own market. It has also been noted that MEIKO's box was quite different from the product boxes of the English-language Vocaloids. Vocaloids are synthesizers, and prior to 2007, they were marketed identically to any other style of music synthesizer, just like a digital drum set. For those kinds of products, it was normal to put an image of the instruments the synthesizer was imitating on the box. This was difficult to do for a synthesizer of the human voice. Leon and Lola used stock photos of some lips to get the idea across, but that didn't have much visual impact. At Krypton Future Media, the company publishing MEIKO and later KAITO, people threw around many different ideas on what to put on the product's boxes, including an illustration of a microphone, but that was considered too vague. It was then decided that using an illustration of a female singer was worth a shot, and a former Krypton employee named Washizu Shogo drew the image that would eventually grace MEIKO's box. He wasn't a professional artist, he was just a guy who worked at the company who drew something up and people liked it. Today, the characters that represent the Vocaloid voices are an extremely important part of the industry, but that's because of changes in marketing strategies and other things we'll get to in later episodes. These early Vocaloid releases like MEIKO were treated as your typical digital instruments, so the illustration of a woman on the box was just there to make the box visually appealing. Other than the dynamic pose, there isn't terribly much to say about the illustration, as the outfit lacks detail and is pretty simple. Still, the box had a lot more appeal than a stock image of an instrument or microphone, and it is strongly believed that this contributed to MEIKO's early success. It is still not exactly clear why KAITO stayed in development for so long after MEIKO's release. I can't say if a simultaneous release was the initial plan or if it was always intended for KAITO to release after MEIKO, but I doubt Yamaha meant to delay his release for over a year like it did. Whatever the reason, there's no question that the Vocaloid program had its share of bugs and issues. All of the first-generation Vocaloids through MEIKO were released on version 1.0 of the Vocaloid software. While it would take the release of the Vocaloid 2 engine to address most of the problems experienced by users of Vocaloid 1, some tweaks could still have improved its performance. I suspect that a fair amount of the time Yamaha spent working on KAITO was used to test updates to the software itself, which is one reason why KAITO was released on version 1.1 of the software. As a result, KAITO was a bit higher in quality and performed better than previous Vocaloid products. A patch was provided for users of the other Vocaloids to update their software to version 1.1 as well, but KAITO took best advantage of the updated software features, such as a slightly changed singing style and portamento timings. The update would actually change the way the voices sounded, so there were some changes made to the underlying synthesis engine in the update for 1.1. The name KAITO was selected from public submissions, and it was chosen because it was very similar to MEIKO's name and it would be easy for non-Japanese people to pronounce. Interestingly, the name was submitted by the person who would become Vocaloid producer Shuti P, who would later go on to be one of the most well-known users of MEIKO's voice. When it came time to design KAITO's packaging, Krypton Future Media decided to have a male singer illustrated for it. Again though, the company did not hire a professional artist to do the illustration, as KAITO's artwork was created by a man named Kawasaki Takashi, who was apparently an event planner by trade. KAITO's illustration is definitely more detailed than MEIKO's, but I'm afraid I can't find any notes on its creation. Development information isn't always plentiful even for modern Vocaloid releases, but it's especially hard to get facts and figures from Vocaloid's early period, before it became very popular. Yeah, despite MEIKO selling much more than expected in her first year, the Vocaloid synthesizer still had a very difficult time gaining ground in Japan. Krypton and Yamaha did try to advertise the software with featurettes in DTM magazine, which has been a pivotal proponent of the Vocaloid software since MEIKO's introduction, and a song contest was held for MEIKO users in 2006. But after MEIKO's first year, her sales waned, and KAITO's introduction in the February of 2006 was met with surprisingly little enthusiasm. Despite his quality advantage over MEIKO and his updated synthesizer engine and all of that, KAITO only sold around 500 units in his first year, half of what was needed. This is important because KAITO's lackluster sales convinced Krypton Future Media that male voices would not be as popular as female voices, and that sentiment would go on to shape the future of the Vocaloid franchise. While it's difficult to know exactly why KAITO sold so poorly, one potential reason is that the majority of the audience who would be interested in a vocal synthesizer in Japan at the time were men. It's been said that in 2006 or thereabouts, 80% of DTM magazine subscribers were male, which would explain MEIKO's popularity and KAITO's lack of popularity. I would not have expected such a polarized response to two similar products, but we are talking about Japan here. It didn't help either product that the Vocaloid software's user interface was in English, even for the Japanese voices. Regardless, the fact remains that MEIKO's declining sales and KAITO's cool reception meant that Vocaloid was still very much an unknown in Japan through to 2007. Yamaha celebrated Vocaloid's 10th anniversary in 2013 because the software was publicly revealed in 2003, and that is the year that the Vocaloid software was first used in commercial music. But it was really in 2007 that Vocaloid as we know it was born. With the release of Hatsune Miku in the August of 2007, the Vocaloid software soon became a sensation in Japan and a hot topic in international communities. There was a huge surge of new people becoming interested in the synthesizer, and those who were familiar with MEIKO and KAITO were saddened that so many people thought that Miku was the first Japanese Vocaloid. Few people had ever heard of them, despite MEIKO being released 3 years prior at that point. But they would not remain forgotten for long, and MEIKO and KAITO fans owe a great deal of thanks to two Japanese Vocaloid users in particular. Well, them and a boatload of luck. See, about 2 weeks after Miku went on sale, a user named Tatsunami posted a 19-second video to Niku Niku Doga, a Japanese video site that focuses on entertainment topics like music and TV. The video was titled Miku's Request, or Wish, and it showed a picture of KAITO along with text asking people to remember him. Miku was also singing a song which asked, "Where are you now and what are you doing?" The point was to draw people's attention to KAITO to remind everyone that he existed. And here's where Lady Luck came into play. A fellow Nico Nico user named Ice P had been working on a cover of a Japanese song from the 60s called The Ice Cream Song using KAITO's voice. I assume he was either done with the song and had not yet uploaded it, or he was very nearly done when he saw Miku's request pop up on the site. A mere 4 hours after Miku's request was uploaded, Ice P uploaded a video of his own titled An Answer to Hatsune Miku. This video began with all 19 seconds of Miku's request and then changed to a screen of a handwritten message from KAITO saying, "Oh, I was eating ice cream," and then KAITO sang the ice cream song for the remainder. This sounds very simple and maybe even a little silly, but I believe this little exchange was one of the most important events in the software's history. Not only was it a very early example of Vocaloid users personifying the character illustrations, giving them desires and emotions and personalities, it was an example of Vocaloid users communicating with each other through the characters and the software, and, inadvertently, collaborating to create something together. These are traits that would become staples of the Vocaloid user community. The An Answer to Hatsune Miku video became very popular, and with it, MEIKO and KAITO began to see a resurgence in popularity. People in Japan realized that Miku was not alone. There were two earlier Japanese Vocaloid products. KAITO in particular benefited greatly from this, as by June 2008, he had sold an additional 1,000 copies, twice what he sold during his release period. MEIKO, on the other hand, did not get quite as big of a boost in the long run. It's all a bit ironic, really. KAITO's initial flop made developers think that male voices would not be very profitable, so the majority of voices developed for the synthesizer over the following years would be female voices. Because more and more female voices were being released, MEIKO struggled to keep pace with the newer voices' ever-increasing quality and realism. KAITO, on the other hand, flourished because the lack of new male voices made him stand out despite his software's age. As a result, KAITO became much more popular than MEIKO ever was. The illustrated singers on MEIKO and KAITO's boxes were not designed to be representative characters the way later Vocaloid avatars would be. They don't have surnames, birth dates, blood types, or anything like that. But where Leon, Lola, and Miriam fans in the West struggled to represent those voices visually, MEIKO and KAITO did have designs. This made it significantly easier for their fans to draw them and for others to recognize them, without even hearing their voices. Though, because MEIKO's illustrated character is in an odd position, the front of her top cannot be seen, so this aspect of her design has varied wildly over the years, even in officially licensed artwork. Later Vocaloid characters would encourage their users to personify them, and MEIKO and KAITO also benefited from this development. As for the characters themselves, MEIKO and KAITO have been represented by fans primarily in a couple of ways. After people were reintroduced to him, KAITO was almost immediately widely depicted as an older brother figure to Miku, and since Miku was followed by 2 other Vocaloids made out to be teenagers, he stayed in that role quite easily. To this day, many Japanese fans still refer to him as Nii-san, Japanese for older brother. They enjoy thinking of him as a kind older brother, despite the fact that neither he nor MEIKO have determined ages. It was simply inferred that they were older than the other popular characters due to their more mature voices. Because the long, flowing blue scarf was a distinguishing feature of his box illustration, it became KAITO's trademark item. Many of the earlier Vocaloid characters have an item that fans like to associate with them for one reason or another. MEIKO's, for example, somehow came to be sake, and sometimes beer, presumably as a way to accentuate her maturity over the younger Vocaloid characters. But because of the ice cream song, fans made ice cream KAITO's favorite food, and it's an association that has become universally acknowledged. Because MEIKO was the first Japanese Vocaloid, and because she is generally considered to be a woman in her early to mid-20s, she was also initially given an older sister characterization by fans. That association perhaps isn't as strong as KAITO's perception as an older brother, due to the introduction of other female Vocaloids that could fill a similar older sister role. But since the duo's resurgence, MEIKO has always been viewed as a more mature and experienced singer, and she sometimes takes on a more motherly feel. Fans also like to pair the 2 characters romantically, a practice I generally dislike, but I do have a soft spot for Kaimei as it is known. Of course, these are fan interpretations of the characters, and one of the defining traits of Vocaloid avatars is that very little, if anything, is set in stone. The characters are blank slates for us to interpret however we want, so there is no right or wrong way to depict MEIKO, KAITO, or any other Vocaloid character. Yes, many people like to portray KAITO as a kind, thoughtful brother, but he has also commonly been depicted as an exhibitionist and a skirt chaser, and MEIKO is sometimes portrayed as a lush. And that's all okay, because community interaction is one of the big things that makes Vocaloids special. It's also very interesting to see how quickly certain ideas can propagate throughout the various communities, and how people react to others' ideas about the characters. Following Miku's introduction, the general attitude among Japanese Vocaloid users was that young female voices were more popular, so MEIKO's relatively mature-sounding voice was at a disadvantage. Some MEIKO users got together and attempted to remedy this situation by altering her voice to make it sound younger, thereby boosting her popularity. This portrayal of MEIKO as an energetic 16-year-old was dubbed Sakine MEIKO, and she was very popular for a time, popular enough to be included in some of the Vocaloid video games and to have officially licensed merchandise made of her. As time went on and more female Vocaloids released, however, MEIKO's more mature voice was no longer perceived to be the handicap it once was, so Sakine MEIKO is not seen as often as she used to be. I mention her here because Sakine MEIKO is an example of members of the Vocaloid community standing up for MEIKO and showing their appreciation for her and making use of the Vocaloid software itself to do it. This kind of activity is unique to Vocaloid. If you're new to all this, then this may sound very silly to you. Why would people care if a particular synthesizer product is unpopular? It's just a computer program, a digital instrument. But because the Vocaloid software synthesizes the human voice, and does it so well considering the difficulty of such a task, people have this strong desire to humanize it. People become very attached to these voices and see them as more than mere instruments. Case in point, since MEIKO was originally released on November 5th, that is her anniversary, and of course all MEIKO fans celebrate her birthday on that date. That makes sense. But young Japanese people love wordplay. They love puns, they love acronyms and contractions and things like that. So they often find ways to associate numbers or dates with things they enjoy, and this was done with MEIKO's name. Mei can refer to the English pronunciation of the 5th month, aka May, and the number 5 can be pronounced as go in Japanese. So May 5th becomes MEIKO, which isn't exactly MEIKO, but it's close enough. Hence, May 5th is known as MEIKO's Day, and it is an annual celebration of the character. People love this singing computer so much that one day of celebration a year isn't enough. As the years went by and as more Vocaloids released, MEIKO and KAITO's voices increasingly showed their age. The second version of the Vocaloid synthesizer, Vocaloid 2, featured quite different technology which directly sampled the human voice for greater realism, and in 2011, the third generation of the synthesizer would contribute even more advances. As I said in previous episodes, the Vocaloid 1 software was designed for Windows versions from the early 2000s, so by 2011, fewer and fewer people were using versions of Windows that the software officially supported. Leon, Lola, Miriam, MEIKO, and KAITO were the 5 products released for the Vocaloid 1 software, and none of these products can be purchased anymore. Since making my Leon, Lola, and Miriam videos, I have had people inform me that the Vocaloid 1 software may work better with more modern versions of Windows than I thought, and I think one person told me that the program works relatively well in Linux using Wine, but I don't own any of these first-generation Vocaloids, so I can't confirm this. Users of Leon, Lola, and Miriam have to experiment to find what works for them, but if you wish to use MEIKO and KAITO, you have a much better option. Krypton Future Media began developing its own Vocaloid products after KAITO released. Though Yamaha had developed MEIKO and KAITO, it was technically Krypton that was responsible for the quote-unquote characters for those voices, since Krypton had those illustrations created for their boxes and gave them their product names. This meant that the company could create new voices for the characters without having to get into a legal wrangle with Yamaha, and MEIKO and KAITO's popularity encouraged Krypton to do just that. I went into great detail on this subject in a few of my other videos, but in short, Krypton Future Media released new KAITO and MEIKO products for the third generation of the Vocaloid synthesizer in 2013 and 2014 respectively. Known as KAITO V3 and MEIKO V3, these products are astounding improvements over the originals, with MEIKO V3 being my favorite Vocaloid update of all time, and they are compatible with the current version of the Vocaloid software and modern versions of Windows, as well as Mac OS X. These new products for these characters have helped them stay relevant over 10 years after they were introduced, and as a result, MEIKO and KAITO remain 2 of the most popular Vocaloid characters. Some of the cynics out there might suggest that MEIKO is being kept afloat due to her relationship to the other Krypton Vocaloids, what with the huge competition she faces because of the large number of female Vocaloids that Japan has these days. But I think her natural sounding voice absolutely shines. This video brings us to the end of the first generation of the Vocaloid synthesizer, but this was merely the first chapter in a tale that is still being written. In the next episode of the History of the Vocaloids HD, we will learn about the advanced Vocaloid 2 synthesizer software, and I will introduce you all to the beautiful voice of its first commercial product. The rest of this video will be dedicated to examples of MEIKO and KAITO's songs, but there are some things I'd like to go over first. If you watched the first 2 episodes, you probably noticed that I did not have very many songs to share for Leon, Lola, and Miriam, and that many of those songs were covers. That is unfortunately how it will be for most of the English language Vocaloids I will cover in this series. It took a very long time for English language Vocaloids to develop a significant and regular user base. It's actually a fairly recent development. For the majority of Japanese Vocaloids, I won't have a problem finding original songs to share, because there were so many people making songs for them. Because MEIKO and KAITO became so popular, they have a plethora of songs to choose from. And I mean that in the proper meaning of the word. They have too many songs to choose from. But I'm not just sharing their top 10 songs or anything like that. I aim to offer a selection of different styles from different Vocaloid users, known as producers, so that you can get a good idea of what these voices were capable of. Many of these videos border on being 10 years old, so don't mind the quality too much.
簡潔な遺言添えられた部屋の鍵は禁じられた技法に続いていた見たことのない仕掛けの鉄の伸ばす聞いたことのない言葉で歌われる音楽部屋の奥で眠る人形幼い僕の顔をしている繋がれた箱に光る文字次の指令を待っていた
聞こえない世界だから僕たちは確かめてみた差し角い空から三角を決めたら高鳴るほど目覚める衝動爆発しそうこの胸の炎繰り返すだけの毎日人生のさあ答えを探してさあここのノズボさんでフライハイされて燃え上がる夜の中走り出す過ちを恐れないいつもいつまでも君とならば分かち合う明日への自由と痛みよ
螺旋に巡り舞い落ちる花びら幾度となく咲き誇り時を散るせささやき交わす淡いつぼみたちは思う色を探り合うただあなたのめでる花になりたい目覚めの朝とともに散らす定めで帰らぬ日々報われる願い抱え込む憂い持て余す純情愛を求め優しさを求め厳しさを求め繰り返し人が傷を求める
灰色の石畳暮れなる誰の街眠り込む人芸に息吹き込む目は出る日針窓のきらめきに鳴り渡る異国の鐘鳴り踊る影帽子誘われ踊る幻想帽子紅色のとを染め走り出した無邪気な迷子のふりをして雪色に光る紙取りのようなひそかな姫の同士
密かな願い縛るものなど七つの海を渡る風とないで駆け巡れもしあなたが泣くならその涙はかって雲となり雨のちでこの海を満たすだろう星のこの海がそんな涙で満ちるなら楽しい青を捨てる喜びをあなたに届けたい
今君が思ってること僕が全部当てたけどか作り笑いの裏側を掴んで吐いてみせてらるよその目を僕に向けたら話などしなくていいからその冷めた笑顔がなじみせてしまえいろんな声もぬるもりも女で何も持ってるもの全部諦めよう壊してあげよう
刃の草むら揺れる絹地への時そやかに窓はついにつまたく気づきへ紡げた色になった永久の窓の耳を任せさらは土の花梅雨の日へ そよと乾いたこの葉はひらひらと今見える日を待ちながら時を数え歩くつぶることの葉に彩られ赤く色め季節なに踊るくれは一枚手のひらに滑りかかるわやった故郷に別れを告げてこの葉の手に光る街に去るまだ見る未来への不安など感じる人などありませんいつも明日を見つめているひたむきな眼差し急がないで誰かに勝つ必要などないあなたのことを愛する人はきっといるかすかに息を立てているあなたの穏やかな笑顔を明日も見られますようにゆっくりおやすみ